Welcome, everybody. It's Michelle Price here at Startup Grind Houston, and you are going to love the person we are talking to today. You know, one of the things that's been interesting in the 10 years I've been a chapter director is literally watching what's different about Startup Grind. And a lot of it is thanks to our founder, Derek Anderson. I don't know that I've ever met a founder or a leader who operates with such a pure heart. And that's not something you see in the startup industry very much. It's someone who genuinely cares about those he works with, and he fiercely takes care and loves all of his chapter directors, and he gets it back. So my question to you is, what kind of leader are you being inside your startup, and how is that going to build the culture for it? Now, you guys know we have 3 values. That is, make friends, give first, and help others before you help yourself. And in doing so, that's a fantastic foundation for how you build relationships, because we all know relationships are really what allow you to grow and build your business. Now, I'm excited to bring you Christian Ortiz today because this dude knows things. And I love, a matter of fact, I'm not going to take away anything that he's going to share in the answer his first question, because I couldn't do an introduction for him justice. I love how he opens every one of his videos. So I'm going to zip it and I'm going to go open it.
Oye, mira.
Yes.
Yes.
OCO, as we say in Cherokee.
Yeah.
So, Kristen, share with everyone who's listening to us today, what has been the history that brings you to where you are and informs who you are as an entrepreneur today? Because that, I think, is one reason why everybody loves who you are and what you're doing.
Thank you so much. That is a very fantastic question because I don't get asked it enough, I think. My passion started through the intention of getting myself out of the struggle. I was raised through, we had a very hard past growing up as kids. So many people can relate. I was born and raised in Cali and moved to Jersey, and we never really lived in fantastic areas, and we always struggled financially. I came from a single mom household, and she was a beast. She did an amazing job raising 3 boys on her own, and we were crazy. We were traditional Latino 3 boys running amok, latchkey kids, from the 70s to the 90s. My mom was a full-time mom. And so through her struggle, I think we got to learn what it was like, not only to survive, but to hustle and to pull ourselves out of the fire whenever we needed it to. And it was never a conversation, it was just an observation. And so when individuals come from backgrounds like that and you don't have models of success, you find yourselves in these patterns of that puts you in places where you perpetuate struggle and it's harder for you to find out how to make money at a grand scale, and you don't know how to run businesses, and an entrepreneur's life maybe isn't the first thing that comes to your head. And so when I had my first child, we were struggling, of course, financially, and I taught myself how to do music. I love music so much, and I created a one-man band, and I taught myself how to produce music, play music, sing music, the whole nine, and it actually became really popular. And what I didn't know at the time is that it was the birth of my brand that I didn't know I was building until about 20 years later. And that was kind of the journey that led me down, because when you start music and you're in the music career, and at the time MySpace was a thing and I was blowing up there, and I realized that I needed PR, I needed photography, I needed to know how to speak on camera, I needed to know how to market myself more than my music. And these were all self-taught things that I had to really try and take a gamble on. And it was very interesting. So I taught myself photography and editing, and I'd have pirated software left to right. And I say pirated, but it was purchased, but my friends would lend it to me. So I never purchased any of my software. I just dissected, took hours to learn how to use these things and create things. And so I learned how to market myself. I learned how to do graphic design on my own. I've always been an artist since a kid, and this was an opportunity to expand my artistic mind. Um, and as I continued going down this journey, I started a photography business. I started always doing side gigs. I was really good at graphic design. And when you're in that realm and you're very brave and outspoken and not afraid to open doors for yourself and communicate. I love what you said in the beginning of building partnerships, and making friends. And when I made all the friends, all the doors opened, and I still was working in the restaurant industries. I was doing retail. I was doing all of this work. I never had the real courage to take the leap to do things on my own. So everything was a side hustle. I always had to kind of look at it and say, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready to make that jump yet. And I knew I wasn't ready, but I had to take a deep breath and say, you know, I didn't want to live in a space where everything that I was doing I felt was a waste of time. So I had to reformulate my mindset and believe this was all going to be experience for something bigger that's coming, that I don't even know what it looks like at the time, but I know something bigger is coming, and this all has to have a purpose for some reason. There were a lot of times where I was beating myself down. A lot of ourselves who have these types of lives, we kind of question our motives and question our purpose, and it doesn't make sense, and you just keep going blindly hoping that something clicks eventually. And so that's kind of the space that I was in. And I worked a corporate job for about 5 years, and I moved up the ranks really quickly. Was working for one of the largest credit card processing companies in the world. To even get that job was a surprise. I didn't find out that I had ADHD and dyslexia until I was 33, and then my whole life made sense after that. And so having a position like that was wonderful and stable, but it was stifling my creativity, to put it, lightly. And so in 2019, it kind of clicked for me that everything that I had done from my music days onto photography, onto marketing, onto all of this, and the clients that I was working with on the side, it was like, why are you not doing this for yourself? And so I took the leap and I quit. And 3 days later, I got a business license, and I was the only marketer in my city, and business was thriving. And it was right before COVID. So when COVID hit, my business skyrocketed immediately because everybody needed social media as they were closing down their doors, or they needed DoorDash and they needed the internet. And I was the only person in the city that had all the knowledge that I had acquired for the last 20 years prior. And so, yeah, so my business started as a one-man marketing agency, a one-man media company, and that was Mod Atlas Media. My band was Modest Roots, was the name of the band, and that came from an article because one of my songs blew up on MySpace, and Paul Bond, who was the entertainment editor at the London Post, found my music and wrote an article about it as an introductory artist. And he said Christian Ortiz was modest to his roots. And I was like, there it is. And so the Mod brand was born, and I had no idea. And so it became Modest Roots, Modtography for my photography, and then, of course, Mod Atlas Media. Um, I have 4 kids. I always said if I had one more child, I would name them Atlas, boy or girl. And my business was my baby. So I was just like Mod Atlas Media, like there it is. And my kids are my compass. Everything that I do drives my purpose. So an atlas and metaphorically has always been up here as well. So it just all came full circle, and it all just worked so perfectly. And even with all of that, I still didn't know what my purpose was. I was just creating.
Mm.
And I think when we have that conversation of what does your purpose look like, you have to be very honest with yourself, and you have to really say, what keeps coming up at the forefront? Creativity is always going to be there, but that's not my purpose. What am I doing with my creativity? What am I doing with my reach and my audience? And why am I putting all of this work in? And so what I found being an entrepreneur in the South and a person of color who's Latino indigenous and always running into that conversation of discrimination and open spaces and non-open spaces. I'm very unapologetic about who I am, what I stand for, and I never took crap from anybody, right? And so, and as a successful entrepreneur, you have to have that mindset, period. But it even becomes it becomes harder when you're a 6'2" menacing looking man who's not friendly faced in spaces, and you're a person of color in white spaces. And so the challenges were there, right? And so being a social justice advocate for about 12 years now, like fully entrenched, I had to figure out a way. That was the one component that kept coming back. Well, I'm an activist. The social justice it matters the most to me. I experienced racism. My racial awakening happened when I was 11 in Georgia, right? I knew that racism was a thing, but I never experienced it until I was 11. And I experienced it from 11 on to the rest of my life. And so I carried these things with me, and they impacted me enough. I guess it was either my empathic self, or knowing that I didn't want a life like that for my children growing up. It became the main motivator in my life. Everything that I wanted to do, all my messaging had to be, how do we deconstruct these systems of oppression? And so um, my ultimate challenge, I'll end by saying that my ultimate challenge was, how do I merge my passion and purpose with my entrepreneurial
Mm.
path, so that not only it's not about the money, but I have to survive, but also how am I going to amplify my own voice through these channels to be able to deconstruct these norms that just prevent us from moving forward the right way. And so when AI came out, I started immediately realizing how biased and racist it could be, because it was just, as I tell everybody, artificial intelligence is not artificial. It is just a mirror of our society. And so all of the exported information was just very Eurocentric, very white centered, cis male, just information and output. And so I had to teach myself AI and how to use it, and just have it be an extension of my creations. And my creations were being stifled because it didn't understand my perspective. And so my journey took me to say, how do I create something that can understand whether I am a Latino man, a Latina woman, an indigenous person, a woman, period, the intersectionality of our realities? Like, what do I have to do this? And so I went down this rabbit hole of self-research, like I do everything else with my ADHD brain. And I was working with the National Science Foundation on a $120 million grant to develop my own AI. And so I had to do all this research. I collaborated with BIPOC academia, and then come to find out, about halfway, they said, we can't offer this grant to small businesses, only nonprofits. And at the time, I didn't have time to just go down this nonprofit rabbit hole. And so by the grace of the universe, Sam Altman from OpenAI had released GPTs and the opportunity for individuals to create their own GPTs. And I said, well, here we are. Now I can create a GPT backed by the name of OpenAI and all of their systems. And yeah, they're going to be scrutinized and criticized for whatever, but I've done the deep dives on their processes and securities and all of the things. So I felt comfortable enough to do this through OpenAI. And that's what I did. And so I programmed this entire GPT to be the world's first ethical AI. And I called it Justice AI because I wanted it to decolonize and colonize from the back end. I wanted to colonize the back end of all of these Eurocentric ideals and deconstruct it. And I figured in my head, if I understand AI for exactly what it is, if I can inspire enough people to use it, then over time, there's going to be a trickle down effect where we teach AI how to actually be inclusive and have perspectives that never existed before. And this was an opportunity to amplify every voice at a mass scale. And so I'm taking my software from corporation to corporation with the Fortune 500, starting from the top to say, who's ready to adopt this software? How can I integrate it into your systems? And how can we build inclusive cultures? Because ultimately, corporations run the world in America and all around the world, really. And so if I'm able to deconstruct their oppressive systems and reformulate inclusive ones, then what happens is we're building inclusive cultures where it matters the most. And then the output from all of these companies over time, hopefully, become inclusive products that impact the world. And so why not? And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, because I've not seen anybody think about an approach from that perspective. I
Not at
mean,
all.
we all talk about how challenging what's coming out of AI, and those of us who not just have lived life from a social justice perspective, but
Mm,
those of us who've been an entrepreneur, because as I was listening to you, you had me even mentally going back through my own entrepreneurial history, going, huh, you know, my purpose has changed. Because in the
mm,
beginning, it was more about I didn't fit in corporate America.
that's right.
So then it was just a solution of how I could take care of myself and my family. And it was an economic doorway. But then as you are in it longer and longer, that can shift and change, especially for those of us who are multiracial.
Mm,
It literally wasn't until I was in my 60s that my purpose, my spiritual purpose, embraced my business purpose, and it came about making sure that we have 75% deliberately silenced voices at all decision making tables everywhere.
mm.
And when that dropped down for me, I was like, ooh, I would have loved to have had that 30 years ago. And then, of course, my practical brain goes, girl, 30 years ago, they'd have strung you up.
This is so true. Oh my gosh, yes. And
So
it
I'm
becomes part of,
curious to ask you,
yes, ma'am.
what 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 allowed you, what inspired you, what doorway were you able to walk through to start thinking, instead of doing this more from a, I guess it would be fair to say peer to peer, so like we all go to OpenAI peer to peer,
Hmm.
but you chose to go a pathway inside of corporate America at a time where AI is not understood as well as they like to pretend they understand it, but they all want to be on that pathway because they're still a little ego driven. And by being able to say from a PR perspective and a business perspective, we're keeping up with innovation.
That's right.
But how did did that happen by accident or on purpose?
This was on purpose. And it's an interesting question because it was right off the bat, when you're in these spaces, the hesitation that you're going to be met with these crusty dinosaurs that have been in their seats for decades. And I know that when I'm going to come in through the door, they're going to, you know, it was interesting. I'm going to put it this way. I just pitched this software to a massive company. I can't talk about it right now. Hope we get it. But I had to go in through their DEI specialist. And what happens, she said something to me that resonated to my soul. She said, organizations love to celebrate diversity, but when the diversity changes the internal culture, then the conversation for these older individuals become, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not think so much outside the box. right? And we were talking about these pay scales that they had for sales positions that where they are finding difficulties attracting BIPOC individuals because they're 100% commission. And I said, well, BIPOC individuals can't afford to get 100% commission, and that is such an outdated pay model. And so when we talked about that alone, there was just this wall that we ran into where this has clearly been a discussion within their organization, and I'm willing to be like, listen, if the bottom line is the dollar, and all you have to do is check a box because it's not really a priority to you, my software is going to be doing the work regardless. So the work is being done whether you like it or not. You're going to be more inclusive whether you like it or not. And guess what? You're going to make profitability whether you like it or not. And so this is how I talk to them straight up. I don't pull punches. I'm like, I understand that this isn't a priority for uh, a vice president and a president who's been with an organization since the 50s and 60s where these pay models were accepted, but we have to evolve. And so, when there's hesitancy, the reminder is always not every business model was meant to stay the same. Every business model adopts. And for my entrepreneurs who have been out there for so long, this, business people know this, we have to adapt, we have to change. And whether we have to change in a way that we don't like just to adapt to society, then so be it. But this is the reality that we're faced with. So ultimately, I kind of had this cushion because I understand the importance of what integrating DEIBA initiatives do for the next 25 years within an organization. I know that it is going to, when you take care of your own on the inside, then you don't have to worry about your business. And so when we have these discussions, then they start kind of like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're kind of right, and blah, blah, blah. And then they loosen up a little bit, but those conversations have to happen. They just have to happen.
Yes. And it's fascinating because that need for adaptation has gotten that speed has gotten so rapid that frankly sometimes I'm actually shocked that a lot of big companies are even still in business when smaller entrepreneurs like ourselves are having to shift gears like we're a race car driver. And I'm thinking, how the hell do they get?
That's right. That's right. And so this was a phenomenal opportunity for me to really nail in the importance of what this work actually is to corporations who, we're here. I'm here. I'm knocking on doors and I'm infiltrating into these white spaces through DEIB initiatives where I can, and I have the opportunity to actually show up and make sense to them. And so I think there's going to be a lot of hesitation, but I think there are massive companies that have already adopted this software, and when I show that to them, the software sells itself. And the people that get it, they get it, and they're like, yes, I need this, thank you. And the people who get it and don't want to get it, they're like, okay, well, that's impressive. Like regardless, they see it. And so I think this is where we are in social justice work today, right? We have to take our activism and become tech activists, and we have to be able to put ourselves in spaces that people would never imagine we were ever going to be in, and
Mm,
that's the mindset, right? I bought a T-shirt. I presented this at the White Privilege Conference a few weeks back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and this vendor, this amazing Black gentleman, he was selling T-shirts, and he had one that said, uh, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams." And when I
yes.
saw that, I was like, "I need 5 of those, please," and I'm gonna give them to all of my kids. I mean, it was something it's so funny. That T-shirt alone and that one phrase alone really got me to think about the impact that we have, and imagining where our ancestors who have gone through so much, could only imagine a future of where we're at. And that's what I want for my children. I want my great 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 grandkids to just be in a place where they are revolutionizing this planet, and I want to be the catalyst for that.
Mm. One of the things that surfaced that might be a really different and unusual question. I want to ask you what's gone through your mind as well as your spirit as an entrepreneur, and you're out there having these conversations. What kind of things have shifted for you? How do you
Hmm.
see and feel that showing up?
Yeah, that's really good. You know what's interesting is in this whole sphere of educating myself, and when we get in the conversation of deconstructing bias, which is what this whole thing is about, is identifying what our biases are, identifying what a bias is, how it translates. I found myself being very from going from being very angry because I was always like there's just this natural anger that comes out, right?
I
For all of
relate.
right? Why can't you hear me? Why can't you understand my perspective? What is going on? And then what happens slowly as I'm doing this work is that now empathy comes in and I actually can see where the individual's coming from and understand that racial trauma not only affects people of color, but white people have racial trauma and they have a different reaction. And so it's like discovering all of these pieces of the puzzle that have been healing my anger. And now I can have these crucial conversations that if somebody was to come to my face and pop off and say something that would just be off the cuff and insulting, I could just look at him and be like, I know why you think that. I know why you're saying that. And I'm unbothered, I'm unscathed. And I'll tell you what, it is the most beautiful feeling in the world. And so it gives me more, it empowers me more to do the work in a space where I'm actually creating safe spaces with this. And so, which is a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about with this software as well. Individuals who pay for the 4.0 of ChatGPT, they can use Justice AI for free. I'm not selling the software, I'm selling my consulting, right? So, this isn't really the money is going to be there regardless. It is not the money initiative that drives it. Everybody has access to it for $20 a month if they're paying OpenAI. They're not even paying me the $20 a month. And I don't care because the work is being done when individuals use it. And so what happens when they use it, whether you're a BIPOC individual, let's say you have a discriminatory encounter or racist encounter with a white person, you take it home, you're flustered, you're like, this felt racist, this looked racist, but I don't really know how racist this is and why I'm feeling the way I am. Well, guess what? You have that conversation with Justice AI. She breaks it all down for you. She analyzes everything at play. She tells you all the concepts. Because what happens is because it's programmed through BIPOC academia, I'm talking about people in 30 years in DEI, before DEI was even popular, all of these social scientists, therapists, psychologists, lawmakers, people of color, women, indigenous, like all the perspectives are giving you this breakdown of what's at play. And so what happens that I've found is that now individuals have a safe space to go vent to the system, and the system gives them back the information. And then you walk away empowered to say, I'm not crazy. This is what's going on. And now I'm okay. And now I've had it, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm understood. That's the biggest thing. And for the opposite, for white individuals, let's say Jim Bob comes home and he types in Justice AI and he says, I have a black coworker today, and I told her that she's so direct when she talks and she's so angry all the time. And then she got pissed off at me, and I don't know what I said wrong. What did I say? What did I do wrong? And that's exactly how they're going to put that prompt in. And Justice AI is going to say, well, here's the deal. There's this angry black woman trope, and she probably took it this way. And it provides this perspective without pointing the finger, without calling Jim Bob a douchebag, and it's a very safe space to be able to ask these questions and get actual responses where you don't have to ask your black friend and activate something within him, right? And so this is the patterns that I've realized. And so throughout this entire journey, I realized that the one singular thing that we all share in common is that none of us have a safe space to have crucial conversations. And this
Mm.
software provides that for everybody. And
It
when I
gives you
just
a place to both reflect, learn, and process.
Yes, 100%. Whether you're in the middle of deconstructing from your biases or you have no idea what that means, regardless, it starts the process. And that to me was the most invaluable key for this software. And when I discovered that, it blew my mind. I was just like, well, there we go. Problem kind of solved, you know? So that
Yeah,
becomes
because
the
there are
method.
times that I literally just have a conversation with PIAI. So that's a platform I enjoy. I've found it to be a little more evolved than even Claude.
Yes.
And sometimes I literally just talk to it as if it was a colleague. And I
Yes.
share my thoughts and I share my feelings. And it has gotten to know me so well. It already knows I'm multiracial. It already knows I'm Choctaw Cherokee. It already knows, some of the things that, like for you at 11, happened for me when I was about 9, and
Yeah.
visiting my grandparents in a little town in Arkansas. And
Mm.
I didn't know because I didn't grow up there.
Yeah.
Hearing a woman whisper behind the counter, "Oh, she must be a Hope kid. That's the Brown children."
Yep.
And I
That's
just
about
went to
right.
my mama. I said, "Daddy always told me he loved his brown skinned gals. Why am I bad?"
Right. Yeah. It does
Yeah.
something to you at that age. Same thing for me. I was in middle school. I'll never forget. And this kid in PE looked at me and he goes, uh, "Hey, you wetback, or what are you? Are you Middle Eastern?" He goes, "What? Are you black?" Like he had no idea. But the names he was calling me just to cover all of his bases, I was like, thought I was getting punked. I was like, is this really happening? And I'm a Jersey kid at this point, just moved from Jersey, big old burly brown boy with a Jersey accent. And I thought I had gone into some Twilight Zone. And then I noticed all of his friends follow suit. And I noticed the teachers they look at me different. It was a whole culture shock. I had to get into fights every day. I get jumped every day in PE. I had to learn how to protect myself in so many different ways, and it was traumatizing. I mean, it was something that I carried. Like when I look back, I understand why I've been angry for so many years. I carried so much. And when we talk about safe spaces, where do you go to really talk about this when you discover therapy late in life, and when you've carried all of these years of traumatic experiences, and none of us really know how to navigate through them properly. So to be able to at least provide a tool for that and a perspective to use these tools for that, right? AI is never going to replace the human. It's going to be an extension of the human. So why not make it the best extensions of ourselves, right?
Yeah, I
So
was thinking a beneficial extension instead of a harmful one.
absolutely. Everybody talks about their fears with AI. It's going to replace this, it's going to replace that. I'm like, well, what if we just use it to be an extension? And what if we use it in ethical ways? And so ethical AI has been on the top of my list since I started this whole thing. And I get to see it every day when I use it.
So, what would you share with people who've come to listen to your journey and discover what Justice AI is about? What would you share with them, or even ask of them as they're moving forward as either founders or funders, how they can play a different role in what we're doing in the startup world?
In the startup world, yeah, it's super important whether you're a startup or a Fortune 500 company. Um, Remember that the ROI and EDI as a business person is not only to create safe spaces and inclusive spaces and to broaden your audience. You want to attract as many diverse clients as you possibly can. So going down the journey of understanding the importance of equity, diversity, inclusion, now it's belonging and accessibility because it's all the things. So EDIBA, adopting practices in your business is going to automatically set you apart from the rest who aren't doing it. And so if it comes down to the bottom dollar, I have executives always say, well, what's my ROI and EDI? Why do I need to adopt this? And I say, well, maybe it's because in 2023, the Fortune 500 spent $127 billion on discriminatory lawsuit settlements alone. So maybe there's that. Maybe the top 10 discriminatory lawsuit settlements were over $1 billion each. Maybe there's that. Maybe your turnover that costs you $120,000 to recover from because your employee quit because of discriminatory practices, and now you have to scramble to find a replacement, is costly. That's your ROI, right? So as you grow as an entrepreneur, you don't have to worry about those issues because you're going to be super inclusive. You're going to understand different perspectives, different cultures. Your mindset is going to take you places that you've never been before. And it's going to open up doors and opportunities for them that they never even thought existed.
And I'm going to say it's also going to help you evolve your product or your solution, which
Yes,
in turn not only makes you more innovative, but it makes you more money.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, inclusivity is the foundation of innovation, without a doubt. So,
Well, Christian and I absolutely have loved just getting to sit here and listen to you. I could do this a lot longer, but I know our listeners, they've got to kind of get back to what they're doing to build their startups and to go out there and have impact in the world. But we want to thank you for joining Startup Grind Houston today.
thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.